Hey everybody, welcome back to 18 Outdoors. Today we got an awesome video with a guy named Tyler Hayes that killed a big buck on a kind of a hard access area that butts up against some public land. But anyway, talking to him, we come into a unique situation, or like a bad situation. You know, we go to the outdoors, you know, to get, you know, because we enjoy it. We enjoy nature. You know, some people go to get away from the hustle and bustle of their life, you know, just everything that they getting tired of dealing with, so they get their peace in the woods. Well, Tyler is going through a situation where he's went through a divorce. Them as ex-husband, ex-wife, had went to court, agreed on visitation, agreed on how they're going to do everything. But for some reason, she is not complying with everything with the visitation. He drove 6 hours to go down there to go pick them up for the weekend, and get down there and somebody's already picked him up out of school. He can't get a hold of nobody, and then when he does get a hold of them, they come up with excuses, well, sick, whatever. So he's went as long as 8 months or so without seeing his 2 kids. So, and the sad part is he's took this to courts trying to get enforcement, you know, to get to see his kids, and there's no enforcement there. There's no help. It's a, you know, just a crazy bad system, and he's been fighting it for years. So he has created, with some other folks, you know, a non-profit to help, you know, with people with this stuff, and you know, and to discuss how they can move on in the future and get, you know, outside help, lawyer help and stuff like that, because he's spent so much money trying to change it and has not got anywhere. So if you don't care, watch this video to the end, and you know, and he'll talk about it a little bit at the end. But it's just, video's kind of long, but I want y'all to go get through it, you know, and feel for this guy, because listen, you know, a lot of us have great lives, but a lot of us have things going on that the outdoors helps us get through it. Because he's done some studies about some people that's dealing with this. The suicidal rate is kind of crazy in it, but you know, he's got church and friends that help him get through this stuff, and that's great. But he just needs some more help. And you know, if y'all are interested in, you know, contributing to his nonprofit, that would be great. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoy this video. Again, it's kind of long, but hey, it's good. So monster buck. But appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate everything y'all do. If y'all like all this, please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see y'all later. All right, everybody, welcome back to 18 Outdoors. Today we got a pretty daggum cool story. A lot of people probably heard about this buck that Mr. Tyler Hayes took, but anyway, this last season, on the last day, the last couple hours, on Redstone Arsenal, that was close to say Wheeler Wildlife Refuge, and people gonna get me about spot places or spotlighting places, but this deer has been posted all over the Redstone Arsenal's website and stuff like that. I've looked and everything, you know, everybody's told me about it, but a huge buck. I mean, 164 3/8 inch, 14 point. That's a daggum mount that we just picked up at Cedar Ridge Taxidermy. Looked like the thing weighed 250 pounds. Yeah. I mean, just a huge buck. We're gonna get Tyler to tell us the story about this day, because he had a crazy, unique, frustrating, aggravating, but boom, yeah, just wonderful day, I guess you could say. First, I was like, just tell us some history about, you know, when you started hunting, you know, where you're from, you know, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and not only that day, but that kind of prefaced the whole season. It was an aggravating season. But I started deer hunting when I was about 12 years old. My grandfather got me into it, or I got him into it again. He had gone probably 20 or 30 years without deer hunting, and you know, I'd expressed interest in going, and he took me, and I guess that's kind of where the fever started. But so I've killed a few decent bucks over the years, 20-something years of hunting, but you know, this was on another level compared to what I'd ever chased after.
Now, your grandfather, y'all had land, or public land, private land, or
he would usually, we were club hunters, and you know, he would get in a place in Cherokee, Alabama. We were there for a couple years. Pretty good memories there. That really kind of sparked the interest in deer hunting, and that's where I took my first deer. It was a big fat nanny doe, and that's all it took. And we also hunted in Waterloo for a couple years after that. Waterloo, Alabama, pretty neat little area. And you know, as he got older, you know, he wasn't really able to go much anymore. But that definitely it still instilled in me that desire to get out there and hunt. So I also picked up a real bad habit if you live in the state of Alabama, which is waterfowl hunting. It's
bless your heart.
I'm telling you, it is a painful and frustrating one. But and so that kind of really, as far as my hunting, that kind of defined me as a hunter for 15, 20 years. I would hunt deer because I like to eat deer meat, but you know, it was really really big on chasing ducks and waterfowl and turkey. So the past 3 years or so, I've really gotten back into the deer woods and just kind of treated it as just a good way to go relax and just enjoy nature, time in the woods, essentially.
Right.
You know, spent a lot of time this past deer season just going and reflecting, and that was a key element of my hunting style too. Was you know, of course, I was watching the wind, I was reading the sign and doing all that, but a lot of those days I wasn't hot on any big deer, on any big buck. There was no particular trophy that I've been chasing all season or had dreamed about all off season. You hear about a lot of these guys who've had like the one they've chased for years, and I think that's what makes it so interesting about this deer. Is I had it was quite the opposite. Didn't know this deer existed, and had never visually locked in or made any kind of contact with that deer, and but I knew what he was leaving behind. Sign wise.
Yeah.
And
we're gonna kind of go ahead and explain like that. This deer was taken on Redstone Arsenal. This is a
correct
military installation in Alabama where you got to have specific guidelines to hunt there. You know, military, ex-military contractors are working on that base pretty much, right?
Correct.
So, but this land joins a decent amount of public land.
Correct.
And it's pretty close to this general area. But anyway, I mean, we're going to preface that, you know, it's kind of not really public land, but you have to compete with other hunters and stuff like that.
That's right.
A couple hundred hunters registered, I think, to hunt at any time.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, his range would have definitely fit in other you know, huntable areas, I believe. So yeah, I mean, you know, and a deer like that gets around. So, I remember though the day the day that I discovered what was going on with this guy, and I had seen tracks and the things that I need to know in order to get in there and get after him.
You told me this track was like,
yeah, he was on some pretty dry ground. He was leaving some very noticeable sign.
Wow.
And had tore up a bunch of trees and just really made it known that he was in there. But getting to that spot was a booger. And of course, you know, getting him out of that spot was even more difficult. But what was interesting though, I'll never forget the day that I come across that, because I said, all right, well, I'm going to be back in here. In 2 days, which is the next available chance that I'll have to get in there, and I'm going to find this deer. And Went to bed that night, woke up the next morning. I mean, I almost had a fever. It was so bad. I was completely broke out from my ears all the way down to my armpits in hives, essentially. I was like, man, what in the world? I said, I know it's not poison oak or poison ivy. I'm not allergic to that. I never have been.
Wow.
Never have been. I could almost
good for you.
Could almost just handle it barehanded and not have an issue.
Wow.
So I said, well, what is going on? And it got even worse the next day. I said, I'm allergic to something. I've eaten something or something I'm allergic to. I didn't know I was allergic to. And so I go to the doctor. I'm like, oh, this is definitely poison ivy. And I was like, no, it can't be. I'm not allergic to that. There's no way that I'm allergic to that. And come to find out, I started paying better attention. That particular area, on almost every stinking tree, even in December, had poison ivy up and down it. And I just, when I had been leaning up against trees, just going through there checking sign and watching, it had been rubbing down in my collar, and yeah, by daylight I was covered up in it, and that was something. That was pretty aggravating.
I got a buck in here that just the antlers give 3 or 4 people poison ivy. That's what taxidermy told me, because I had it. Taxidermy guy got it, and his daughter got it. Yeah. And that's from a deer rubbing poison ivy.
I think there's some strains of it out there that even the folks who are resistant to it can come down with it pretty bad. And
when I was young, it didn't bother me, but now I can get wind blow by it, and I can get it. I can't. I mean, it just tires me up now. So I can't handle it. So I pay attention to it now and stay away from it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be more conscious of it now. Yeah.
So this area you was hunting, you could not use trail cameras, or you just didn't use cameras?
That's correct. No, there's no cameras allowed, and there was more than one report of a harvest, that not going to necessarily say it. They said it was a big deer or whatever, but more than one time I'd hear about a harvest and my heart would sink. It's like, all right, well, that was.
I've been here.
That's probably it. Yeah, because what was interesting is the 3 or 4 days where I was down, I mean, I was almost incapacitated from that poison ivy,
Wow.
was when several harvests had come in. And I was like, all right, well, that was it. There was my chance.
Right. The only reason you're knowing this deer is big because the sign and stuff. So if somebody kills it big, you think it could be him.
Is that right?
So are these deer, when they get taken or get checked out or documented for certain zones, we would have an idea that it come from that zone or something?
Essentially, yeah. Okay. And so something had come down the pipeline, and I was okay, well, that was him. It's time to switch gears and do something different, because that was probably, I mean, he wasn't just an absolute stud, but he could have carried enough weight on him to have been what I was tracking. So I kind of gave up.
Oh.
I kind of said, all right, well, we're gonna switch gears, do something different. And but I kept getting drawn back to that spot. Had no reasonable hypothesis as to why. I just kept going back, and I was kind of reminded. I think it was Warren Buffett that actually said that timing the market is nothing like time in the market. And so I just kept putting in the time. Kept going in there, not really knowing why.
That's kind of the way I kind of hunt. Yeah, you got to put them pay your dues. Put them days in. So
yeah. It was already a very geographically undesirable spot. It also had a lot of the things that I would have grown up looking for, terrain features. Otherwise, it didn't have. It just was kind of near about the opposite of what you would say, hey, that looks like a good spot.
Well, go ahead and kind of explain what kind of...
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, there were no food sources were somewhat scarce kind of in that area. Cover was not that great. You know, I've really gotten hung up in recent years trying to find terrain features that would at least have a higher probability of thermals, something like that, where these bucks can come in and kind of check in on that. Really no good possibilities there, or nothing I had seen. I'd spent a significant amount of time in there, covered up in coyotes, you know, to the point that going in at dark or coming out at dark was, you know, a little risky. Because I had more than one follow me out. You know, I would hear something behind me, and I got to where it's like every trip, the power of my flashlight got increasingly brighter. You know, that I would take with me and would check behind me pretty often, and you would see a set or two of eyes. You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just kind of you know, to me, a very non-traditional scenario on you know, what you would typically expect as far as that goes. And but anyways, I kept coming back for more. If nothing else, it was to mow down the coyotes at this point. You know,
it's like flat ground, I'm assuming, because that's you know, pretty close to the river, and then a pine hardwood mix, or
essentially
pine hardwood mix. So
but
decent amount of browse in it.
But hardwoods that just didn't want to produce. They just didn't. They weren't really dropping much of anything, and so that was interesting. You know, having grown up and hunted a lot of Colbert and Lauderdale County, like
wild oaks everywhere.
Oh man, yeah. Almost to the point that it's hard to really be able to pattern something. You know, depending on the crop that year. You know, but yeah. So again, just kept putting in the time, and
and he was leaving scrapes and rubs just like crazy. Or
well, what's interesting is I think that might be why a lot of what brought me back is because it's like, you know, supposedly what I thought might have been removed from the general area, there was still stuff that looked semi-fresh, and it's like, you know, this isn't like yesterday or last week's work, but could be, you know, just at this point, it's like it's affecting the psyche, right? And now you're starting to think you've seen things you hadn't seen, and you're starting to say that what you are seeing may not really be what it is. And so there's some of that going on, and you know, there were a couple times that I had to approach the area in a not ideal wind setting, or just not hunt it at all, because I would get there and there'd be someone else's truck there. And that one stung. You know, that would really make your heart sink. Yeah. And you know, and there was some of that going on. I had more than one bizarre interaction with because of its nature of, you know, land that is being shared. I'd have hikers, joggers. You know, you could hear all kinds of things going on and whatnot, and you just never knew what kind of external factors could affect your
outside pressures, basically.
Yeah. You know, just not the kind of pressures I would imagine you'd experience at Bankhead or somewhere like that, you know, in deep woods. But you can have also, you never know.
Hikers, right. Horse riders, or whatever.
That's right. So. Yeah, and you have horse riders, right? They might come through. Yeah. So, you know, some similarities, I guess, there. But
that's one of them things, like you was talking about deer getting killed. You start worrying about that kind of stuff. That's letting that influence you. Don't worry about what somebody else is killing or what could be a pressure or people walking in, hikers, whatever. Can't, you know, that's one thing I've learned over time. When I was young, you know, stuff like that would drive me crazy, but now I just try to just block that stuff out, let it just go on. It's happened, don't worry about it. You can't control it, so don't get hung up in it. So, I mean, it's just just part of it, especially with the areas where you got different types of people using the area. You know, multiple recreational uses. So that's the thing. That's kind of, I know it can be frustrating at times, especially when you know that something like that you harvested is in the area, just tearing up stuff and leaving crazy sign, big old feet print, tracks. So if you don't care, go ahead into. I'm ready to hear the whole story because you kind of told it to me before, and it's kind of unique. So.
I mean, yeah, I kind of thrown in the proverbial towel by that point in the season. I mean, we're down. I hunted the rut pretty hard when I had the opportunity to do so, and it was kind of one of those situations where, coming out the backside of the rut, I had essentially resolved to, well, it's my chances of a trophy or even anything, by my standards, trophy is not impressive by most folks' standards, but any kind of chance on a trophy would have been out the window at this point, because we're down to 2-minute warning here, and so I decided at this juncture I'm gonna go somewhere there's volume, right? At this point, I just want big old fat doe here just to put in the freezer at this point, and that's good enough for me. So I go to an area that's known for volume, and it's gonna be raining most of the night leading up to. This is the last day of the season.
Last day of
the season. That's an important part I left out, because that second to last day of the season, conditions weren't great, but they were tolerable, and of course I didn't do well then. But morning of, just to make sure that I'm crossing my T's and dotting my I's, I'm going to get in there as early as I possibly can. I've planned out every little thing. I've watched the wind. I've done all these things, and it's not. It's an area that's known for a good bit of deer, but it's not necessarily something where I'm in any capacity expecting to drag something out that's got a big rack on it at all. I'm meat hunting at this point, and the way I meat hunt is I'm going to find the biggest, fattest, preferably loudest doe, mouthiest doe in the woods, and that's what I'm going to take home. So I go and I hunt this spot, and man, if I didn't have one, I had 4 or 5 basket racks just walk under me, hanging out. I mean, they did everything but look up at me. I mean, they're everywhere. Can't get a doe. I mean, come on, we have reached the bottom. Can't get a doe to walk under the stand.
Wow.
And in true, shared land form, I hear. All right, here he is. I hear something coming through the woods. This is I hear it. He's brushing against limbs. Oh, he must have something big on top of his head. And then it turns into tink, tink. Hear a little metal here, like a zipper there, and coming through the woods. I mean, in the middle of nowhere, is a person. I was like, all right, that's it. It's gonna rain soon, which I had packed all this stuff. I probably looked like I had packed enough to camp or something, and to try to stay dry that day because I'd fully anticipated rain. I was like, you know what? I'm just not.
This was another hunter walking in?
This was another hunter at this point. I was like, all right, my cover's blown. And hey, he was courteous though. He was very polite, and he just looked up. I'm sorry. All right. I was like, all right. And I actually said to him, I said, hey, you know what, man? I'm calling it a day too. I'm ready to go home, get dry and get warm. I said, if you'll wait a minute, I'll come down out of this tree and walk out with you. And so we did. And he peels off and goes to his vehicle. I go to mine, and I'm essentially done for the day. And I ring out.
That's basically for the season.
I mean, for the season. Yeah, really for the season. And at this point, by the time I get back, you know, like I'm drenched, because it got really warm that day too, probably in the low 60s. So I'm drenched in sweat, but I'm also, you know, I've been rained on and just ready to get somewhere dry at this point, you know, throw in the towel and get in the truck. I had just barely gotten all my equipment in the vehicle and the bottom falls out. I mean, just one of your classic pop-up showers that happens on the Tennessee River, just dumping.
Wow.
Couldn't hardly see, you know, to drive out of there. And so I'm not going fast. And I'm not getting anywhere fast at that rate. And then it just, like as quick as it started, though, it stopped. I was like, well, that's strange. And I pull over and check the weather, and I'm like, well, I got about 3-4 hours of daylight left. I'll go back to this, you know, the stupid spot that I don't really know why I keep going back to. And I'll just, at this point, you know, the season essentially felt like a failure. And, you know, and it had been rough. I've been going through a rough patch, you know, personally too. And it's just like, hey, you know, I think at this point, we're just going to go on a nature walk. I got to that spot and the rain turned on again. But for whatever reason, I decided I'm not gonna leave. So I just sat there in the truck and essentially contemplated all my bad decisions for the hunting season. But then also was just kind of like, hey, I'm just going to try to get my mind right. We're in a mental reset here. When I get out of this truck, we're just going to walk and think. And the rain stops, and I get out of the truck, and, you know, at this point, after getting drenched, I grabbed the only thing that I think I had dry in the truck, which is a white undershirt that I had thrown on. I was like, well, I got to have some camo over it. So I threw my rain jacket back on, got out of the truck, threw on all the blaze orange, and decided, I'm like, I'm not even going to climb a tree. I just not in the mood. I'm just going to walk and clear my head. But I do have this half bottle left of dough and estrus. It won't be any good by next time. Might as well use it. So I douse this drag rag up like like I'm trying to start a fire with it or something, and head off. I don't even really know where I'm going, but it's in the area that, you know.
Area with all the big signs.
Well, and all the poison ivy. You know, so at this point, I'm like, hey, you know, what could be much worse? I mean, okay, well, I'm gonna go trudging off through all this, whatever. Got nothing to lose. And but you know, that drag rag was seemingly unimportant to most stories. A lot of folks would even use it just to cover themselves on the way in while they sit in a stand. Why did I decide to take it with me? I'm not going to climb a tree. I don't know. Guess I didn't want it to go to waste.
Right.
And I tie that rag to a belt loop on the back of my pants and take off. And I get pretty deep off in the woods, and I'm just moving slow, moving quiet, just walking in the woods the way I'd always been taught how to. And that drag rag hangs up on like a twig, little briar or bramble of sorts, and it hangs up just as I'm getting ready to stand up on a little stump, just to try to get some kind of little vantage point, to kind of look over the edge of a knoll of sorts, I guess. And It got hung good enough, it kind of almost pulled me back. And I reached back there just in disgust, and I untied this thing, and I throw it down. And that's when I heard something rustling right here, and it kind of caught my eye. That booger is standing there looking at me at 50 yards, maybe 40. Just, and I think what I heard was his antlers kind of just barely tapping on some of the limbs above his head, because I'm inclined to think remember there, I told you there, he didn't really have any cover. It was like the one little patch that, I mean, something you'd see like rabbits would come busting out of, like if you were on a rabbit hunt. That might be something you'd go over and kind of kick and see what you could jump up. You know, anyways, he's standing up, he's looking at me, and I know there's enough antler on his. I mean, you see what he's toting around. I know there's enough for him to be legal. I wasn't going to stand there and start counting. Probably would have been more inclined to miss him. Anyways.
So you think he was bedded there and got up? Or?
I think what I heard was the sound of him standing up out of his bed.
Wow.
And here's why. Because I went back later and looked and checked the wind, and I think it was my scent cone that made him stand up. I don't know if he smelled me or that drag rag.
Yeah.
But based on the shape of his body, he was a hard worker, boy. He was a chaser.
Wow.
And I think maybe he was just looking for one last chase, you know, before the season wrapped up, because I definitely think scent was key.
Wow.
I think it played a large part in causing him to move, because I'll be honest with you, I think I'd have kept moving. I'd have probably circumnavigated that little patch with I'd have bothered to look, and he'd have eased on out, right back out the other way.
And you stopped because your drag rag was hung up?
I stopped because my drag rag was hung up, threw it down on the ground, looked up to see him. And, of course, at this point, it's a standoff, you know. And I think he was waiting on me to move, and I was certainly trying to figure out what I was going to do. And as he turned to run, I did the only thing I knew to do, which is about the cheesiest thing, or I thought it had always been cheesy. And I just, meh. And it was long enough for him to turn broadside to try to figure out what he heard. And that was it.
Dropped him in his track?
That was it. He ran probably 10, 12 feet.
Wow.
And yeah, never showed any sign of thrashing or anything. I mean, he just kind of trotted off. I thought I missed him.
Really?
I honestly thought it was. I said, "Wow, what a wonderful way to whiff an already bad season. You make it all the way to the end and you miss."
And if you tell he was big.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So. Yeah. Well, and what was interesting is that I think it was more telling to me, just the silhouette of him, just looking at him, just the sheer mass of him, even facing me, just big barreled chest and wide shoulders. I mean, that probably told me more than the rack, and I probably was best for watching him that way as opposed to watching the rack, because you know, a lot of mistakes are made when you start looking at what's on top of their head.
Yeah, that's a big deer too. I'm telling you. Now, so how long do you wait? You start calling people, or you just run up there? Or you wait, give me.
I tell you what I did. I almost accepted defeat again, and I sat down and waited. I said, "All right, one or two things has happened. I made contact with this thing, and I definitely don't want to push him, or I've clean missed him, and I need to sit here and figure out what I'm going to do next." with 2.5 hours left in the season, I mean, you're not left with a whole lot of options.
Right.
And probably sat for half an hour, and of course I got curious. And you remember me telling you kind of stood up out of that little patch where I think he had been bedded, and I start trying to work my way over to it, and I said, oh, yeah, well, there he is. He's done falling back. He's done laid his head down in a pile of kindling. I thought, that's what I thought from 20 yards away. Like, he's
laid in a bunch of sticks.
Laid in a bunch of sticks. And come to find out, there wasn't a stick anywhere nearby. It was just all that trash on top of his head. So, yeah.
That's, an impressive deer. Your heart, when you get up there and your heart pounding, or you're like, what in the world is this?
It probably took 5 minutes to make the first phone call because I couldn't even make words. Wow. I was just like, what have I done? But yeah, I was finally able to get that call in. As a matter of fact, the first person I called he's a very much a veteran deer hunter and a good woodsman. Someone who I had bounced ideas off of a lot about, hey, if you were a deer, those kinds of conversations that had probably gone on since I was probably 15 years old. And he's the first person I called because he knew as many hours of conversations I'd had about essentially chasing this phantom. Like, am I having to the point that there was some dialogue exchanged with him towards the end of the season, like, man, like, am I chasing something that's not even real? Do I need to be backing out of here, cutting my losses? Do I need to go hunt, another county, because that was something else that, I've learned over the years is that a lot of times having multiple properties is key, right? I mean, there's a lot of times you can't expect one piece of property to hold a trophy year over year. And, so I kind of had that debate, just all kinds of things and theories in my head, right? And so I called him. And he's killed some good deer, but I called him and he was just like, oh, how'd you do that? It was essentially, he didn't know what to say. Like, hey, I think the first words he said were, where are you at right now? And then of course, like, the next call was for help essentially, because I knew what I was looking at. There was no way I was going to get that thing out of there by myself. There's no way.
Right.
And even with really good help, someone who's really knew what they were doing, and it was two of us, able-bodied men, and the tools we needed, still took us probably 2 hours to get it out of there.
Wow.
And that was with the
game heart.
Yeah, and the guts out. We wanted to leave them in just so we would see what this thing would weigh, but it just created entirely too many logistical problems to even hope on getting him out. But with a witness, more than one witness, he weighed field dressed. He was at like 160.0. I mean, right on the nose, 160. Definitely the biggest bodied deer I've ever encountered.
His pictures and looking at the mount, the size of his neck, stuff like that sucker had to be pushing 250 in his prime before rutting. So humongous deer. I mean, again, 164 3/8, 14 point. Had 5 and 6/8, 5.5 inch bases.
Yeah,
just crazy mass, just a beautiful buck. Some stickers, just what dreams is made of.
That chocolate horn look that's really, really neat. I mean, I'm kind of partial to that. I like those.
Thick tines, good length, 24-inch plus beams. So you're looking at pictures probably right now, just a huge buck. I mean, just anything. I mean, anybody would be just happy to take something that big, especially in Alabama and on limited access areas and stuff. So, but just, crazy buck. So what do you go from there? Kind of.
Right. Yeah.
So again, anybody taking 160-something inch buck in Alabama, public, private, or whatever, and bigger is a heck of a feat. And just especially be going through what you're going through last day, and you're one spot and you pretty much thought was blown, and then going to your last spot and it's rain, come big rain, and then decide you're just going to go on a walk, basically.
Essentially.
Yeah. I really appreciate you telling us this story about this buck. Again, it's an amazing buck, but now I want to let you he's had some rough patches going on in his life, over the last few years, and he's going through some things with child visitation, child custody stuff, and he has started a non-profit.
Correct.
And go ahead and talk about that, and get into that, because us being hunters or outdoorsmen, when you have issues and stuff like that, your release or your time with God or time alone, this part means so much, and evidently, I mean, you were basically blessed, given a blessing to help you get through some of those patches and stuff. So go ahead and talk about your nonprofit and some of the issues.
Well, essentially, this is going on for about 5 years now. Have been in an ongoing, essentially ongoing, offgoing custody battle. And there have been significant lengths of time where I've gone without, being able to see my children or exercise at visitation. And for me, I think at one point it was in excess of 6 months, without seeing my children. And, it was devastating.
Right.
It was devastating. It is crippling financially and, of course, mentally. And for several years, it seemed like any time that, I'll go through a rough patch or whatever, need to clear my head, I found solace in the outdoors. Whether that was, hunting or fishing or, I remember as a younger adult, I would go bird watching with my grandparents, and even that, it was just peaceful. I mean, they're kind of the resident experts on eagles, and
wow.
And they actually they taught me a lot as far as that kind of stuff goes too, and there was only so much, however, being outdoors, could do till you really have to have boots on the ground and do, address these issues head on. So, the money's running out, the time's never being made up, in and out of court, and it's exhausting. So I took to the internet and looking for help, essentially. Where can I find help that an attorney or a counselor, just cannot provide.
Right. And to preface this stuff, the way you're telling me, you have when you've done your initial custody stuff, the judge said you're getting these weekends,
correct,
this certain time during the summer, this certain time during Christmas, but it's not been happening the way the judge says it, and then there's not any enforcement, or you're having a hard time getting any help to getting this enforced. You're not getting to see the kids like you're supposed to get.
Yeah, there's very little bite behind the bark when it comes to some of this stuff, and there are certain, of course, as I learned over time, there's certain entities who are trying to change that, but that's what I found looking for help, going online. There are at the time there were hundreds, there's thousands now I've met who are experiencing the same thing, who cannot find the help that they're desperately seeking or that they need. And so I have started a nonprofit to essentially be a network to bring together parents who are struggling with these same things, to help provide to them and the resources they need in order to be more successful, dealing with the court system, dealing with all the things that that come with these same court child custody related struggles, and to both provide resources, be a resource, and give people a voice, essentially collectively, and as such, that hopefully, maybe not in my generation, but make a change. That something can be done that will bring to light this kind of thing, and
that would be so frustrating. I feel for you. I mean, that's awful to not be able to get to see your kids the way you're supposed to, right. And especially when the law has basically stated that's the way you're supposed to see them. These are the days, these are times, and you're not getting to them, and then nobody's helping you. So
Correct.
I mean, it's crazy. So what's the name of them?
There's a sense of helplessness there. I do agree with you. But the name of the organization is the Equal Parenting Initiative, and you can find us on Facebook as the Equal Parenting Initiative, or theequalparentinginitiative.org. So check us out. We're hoping to have some really neat content coming out soon. Hopefully you'll be able to catch us on YouTube for a really neat series that we plan on doing that actually will involve the outdoors in a lot of ways, and then also a special project we're doing that some hunters and outdoorsmen might be interested in. It's called EPI Aerial. It is a aerial photography campaign that's a special project of the Equal Parenting Initiative, and all the funds that go from that photography campaign will be donated to the nonprofit.
Wow, so that's great. So y'all check that out. Feel for people that's going through stuff like this, because I can't imagine having to deal with that, and that would be just so frustrating. So, but hey, everybody, thank y'all for watching the videos. Well, again, we appreciate y'all's support. If you haven't liked, please like and subscribe, and you don't care if you haven't got one of our books, check out Amazon and get a book. Also, we got a link on there where you can, on our YouTube channel, where you can go on. We got a little store set up. Like if you're interested in any kind of merchandise, shirts and stuff, you can check that out. And we really appreciate anything like that. So, again, we appreciate y'all's support. Keep watching. We're going to keep trying to share the outdoors and how we do some things, and try to help everybody that we can enjoy the outdoors. And, we do this for just basically because of the environment and the community that's involved and built around hunting. So, again, we appreciate y'all. Like, share, and we'll see y'all again.